In today's video, we're diving into one of the most pivotal and intriguing moments in ancient history. We'll be discussing the famous Battle of Actium, an epic naval clash that not only changed the course of the Roman Empire, but also defined the fate of some of antiquity's most iconic figures. Our story unfolds on the turbulent waters of the Ionian Sea, where Roman power faced one of its greatest challenges. This battle was not just a clash of armies, but a collision of ambitions, loyalties, and loves. At the center of this storm was Cleopatra, the Queen of Egypt, whose alliance with Mark Antony became a crucial factor in this conflict. Cleopatra wasn't just a bystander or a passive ally. Her influence and resources played an essential role in Mark Antony's attempt to challenge the power of Octavian, the future Augustus. With her political acumen and determination, Cleopatra became a key player who could decide the fate of the empire. And it's this story, filled with intrigue, betrayals, and heroism, that I'll be sharing with you in today's video. Get ready to explore the events leading up to this epic battle and discover how Cleopatra and Egypt were central to this historical moment. Stay with us until the end and dive into this fascinating narrative of power, passion, and destiny. Cleopatra's rise, power, and politics in ancient Egypt. Cleopatra's story begins well before the Battle of Actium. Born in 69 BC, Cleopatra VII ascended to the throne of Egypt as the last ruler of the Ptolemaic dynasty. Her reign was marked by a combination of personal charisma, political intelligence, and a unique ability to manipulate the intricate power relations of her time. From a young age, Cleopatra stood out for her extensive education, mastering several languages and deeply understanding both Egyptian and Greek cultures, which earned her the respect of her subjects and allies. The rise to power was not easy. Cleopatra faced a series of internal challenges, including family disputes and struggles for control of the throne. After her father, Ptolemy XII, died, she initially ruled alongside her younger brother, Ptolemy XIII. The tensions between the siblings culminated in a civil war, during which Cleopatra managed to secure her reign with the help of Julius Caesar, the Roman leader. Her alliance with Caesar not only solidified her position, but also reinforced Egypt's strategic importance in Roman politics. With Caesar's death, Cleopatra found herself once again in a precarious position. But her skill in forming alliances did not abandon her. In 41 BC, she found in Mark Antony, one of the triumvirs governing Rome, a new ally and lover. The relationship between Cleopatra and Antony was not merely romantic. It was a union of political and military interests aimed at challenging the growing influence of Octavian, Caesar's heir. Cleopatra also faced significant external challenges. Egypt was a wealthy nation, but its strategic position between Rome and the riches of the Middle East made it a target of foreign ambitions. Cleopatra had to carefully navigate the treacherous waters of international politics to maintain her kingdom's independence. Her ability to balance power among the great powers of the time was a testament to her astuteness and strategic vision. The Queen of Egypt was not limited to the role of a political leader. She was also a figure of great cultural importance, patronizing the arts, sciences, and literature. Cleopatra cultivated an image of sophistication and power, utilizing symbols and rituals that highlighted her divinity and authority. This carefully constructed image helped cement her place in history as one of the most influential and enigmatic women of antiquity. Her rise to power, therefore, was a complex mosaic of politics, war, and culture. Cleopatra knew how to use all available resources to consolidate her rule and secure Egypt's future. Her ability to forge alliances and manipulate international politics placed her at the center of some of the most significant events of her time, setting the stage for her crucial role in the Battle of Actium. Mark Antony and Cleopatra, the alliance that challenged Rome. The union between Mark Antony and Cleopatra was one of the most iconic and controversial of antiquity. After Julius Caesar's death, power in Rome was divided among his successors, Mark Antony, Lepidus, and Octavian. Antony, seeking to consolidate his power in the East, found in Cleopatra a valuable ally. The Queen of Egypt had resources and influence that could help tip the balance of power against Octavian. Cleopatra saw in Antony not only an ally, but also an opportunity to expand her power and protect Egypt's independence. Together, they formed a powerful alliance, sealed both by their personal relationship and their shared political goals. Antony was captivated by Cleopatra's charm and intelligence, but also by the potential she offered to solidify his position against Octavian. The alliance between Antony and Cleopatra was not well received in Rome. Octavian, seeking to undermine Antony's influence, used their relationship as propaganda, portraying Cleopatra as a dangerous foreigner who had enchanted Antony and threatened Rome's security. This narrative effectively galvanized Roman support against Antony, setting the stage for the forthcoming confrontation. The relationship between Antony and Cleopatra was complex and multifaceted. It was not just a political partnership, but also a deep personal connection. They shared not only common interests, but also a worldview where their ambitions could be realized. Antony, often underestimated as merely a soldier, found in Cleopatra an intellectual partner who challenged his perceptions and expanded his aspirations. However, this alliance also brought challenges. Cleopatra's presence alongside Antony stirred jealousy and suspicion among the Romans. Many saw Cleopatra's influence as a threat to the integrity and values of Rome. Octavian exploited these tensions, portraying Antony as a leader corrupted by a foreign woman and promoting a narrative of decadence and betrayal that helped solidify his own power. Despite these difficulties, Antony and Cleopatra remained united, driven by a combination of love, ambition, and mutual need. Their actions, though often controversial, reflected a deep commitment to their shared goals. Their alliance represented one of the last great attempts to maintain Eastern independence in the face of Rome's relentless expansion. The road to Actium, tension and preparations. The Battle of Actium was not an isolated event, but the climax of years of rising tensions between Mark Antony and Octavian. As the alliance between Antony and Cleopatra strengthened, Octavian worked tirelessly to consolidate his power in Rome. He used propaganda and diplomacy to politically isolate Antony, portraying him as a traitor who had abandoned Rome for a foreign queen. The tensions culminated in a series of military and political confrontations. In 32 BC, Octavian managed to convince the Roman Senate to declare war on Cleopatra, thus avoiding the appearance of a direct civil war against Antony. This strategic move allowed Octavian to focus his propaganda against Cleopatra, painting her as the true enemy of Rome. Meanwhile, Antony and Cleopatra were preparing their forces for the inevitable clash. They assembled a vast naval fleet and a considerable army, establishing their base of operations in Actium, Greece. The preparations for the battle involved complex military and diplomatic maneuvers as both sides sought alliances and reinforcements to strengthen their positions. Octavian, on the other hand, demonstrated exceptional skill in creating a compelling narrative that demoralized his opponents. He managed to turn public opinion and gain crucial support within Rome and among allied provinces. His propaganda campaign was relentless, depicting Antony as a degenerate leader controlled by a manipulative foreign woman. This narrative was key to strengthening Octavian's position and preparing his forces for the final showdown. The preparations for Actium were marked by a series of tactical and logistical maneuvers. Antony and Cleopatra had a considerable fleet, but faced significant challenges in terms of supplies and communication. The location of Actium, a strategic inlet in the Ionian Sea, was carefully chosen for its tactical advantage, allowing the possibility to control access to the sea and block Octavian's forces. As tensions mounted, both sides prepared for the inevitable confrontation. The battle would not only be a struggle for military dominance, but a test of strategies, resources, and willpower. For Antony and Cleopatra, Actium represented their last hope to resist Octavian's growing domination and secure a future where their ambitions could be realized without the shadow of Roman power. The preparations were intense, with both sides aware that the fate of empires and history itself were at stake. The Battle of Actium, Strategies and Confrontation. On September 2nd, 31 BC, the forces of Mark Antony and Cleopatra faced Octavian's fleet in the waters of the Ionian Sea, near Actium. The battle was marked by bold strategies and intense confrontations. Octavian, commanded by his admiral Agrippa, employed superior maneuvering tactics and the advantage of a lighter, more agile fleet to encircle and wear down Antony and Cleopatra's forces. Cleopatra and Antony, aware of the battle's importance, positioned themselves at the heart of the action. However, coordination between their forces was hampered by communication and logistical difficulties. Weather conditions also played a role, complicating the maneuvers of Antony and Cleopatra's large galleys. The battle reached its climax when Cleopatra, sensing imminent defeat, decided to withdraw her fleet from the fight. Her retreat, whether a strategic decision or a survival instinct, demoralized Antony's forces, leaving him stranded at a crucial moment. Cleopatra's withdrawal marked a turning point in the battle, allowing Octavian to achieve a decisive victory. Octavian's strategy was meticulously planned. Agrippa, his admiral, used a series of blockades and wear-down tactics to weaken Antony's fleet. With a lighter and more agile fleet, Agrippa was able to maneuver to encircle Antony's forces, preventing their escape and reducing their options. This gradual encirclement was crucial in demoralizing and weakening the enemy forces. Cleopatra's retreat had a devastating effect. Many of Antony's commanders and soldiers, seeing the Queen of Egypt leave the battlefield, interpreted it as a sign of inevitable defeat. Antony's troops' morale plummeted, and the cohesion of his forces rapidly disintegrated. Without Cleopatra's presence and resources, organized resistance against Octavian became virtually impossible. The Battle of Actium was not just a naval confrontation, but a decisive moment that sealed the fate of some of antiquity's most significant figures. Octavian's victory was not merely a matter of military superiority, but also of strategy, propaganda, and the ability to manipulate perceptions of his enemies. This battle marked the end of Antony and Cleopatra's hopes and paved the way for Octavian's rise as Rome's first emperor. Cleopatra's crucial role in the battle. Cleopatra was not merely a spectator at the Battle of Actium, but an active participant whose decisions had a significant impact on the course of events. Her presence at the battle symbolized her commitment to Antony and his cause. Commanding a portion of the Egyptian fleet, she was directly involved in the military operations and strategies defined for the confrontation. Cleopatra's retreat, often interpreted as a cowardly escape, can be viewed differently when considering the circumstances. Some historians suggest that she was trying to preserve what remained of her forces for a future confrontation or hoped to regroup and fight another day. Her decision, though controversial, reflected her political acumen and understanding of the strategic realities of the battle. After the defeat, Cleopatra returned to Egypt, where she continued to prepare defenses against Octavian's advance. Her determination to resist until the end showcased her resilient spirit and commitment to Egypt's independence. However, with the fall of Mark Antony and the arrival of Octavian's forces, Cleopatra found herself in an increasingly desperate position. Cleopatra also played a crucial role in the logistics and financing of the campaign. Her vast resources allowed for the formation and maintenance of Antony's fleet and army. Furthermore, her influence and leadership ability were vital in maintaining cohesion among the various allied forces. Her constant presence and direct involvement in military decisions underscored her importance in the war effort. The Queen of Egypt did not merely passively support Antony. She was deeply involved in all phases of the campaign, from preparation to the execution of strategies. Her withdrawal from the battle, therefore, was not a simple abandonment but a calculated decision reflecting her assessment of the situation on the ground. This act highlights her ability to make tough decisions under pressure. Finally, Cleopatra's presence at the Battle of Actium illustrates the complexity of her role as a leader. She was simultaneously a strategist, a commander, and a symbolic figure. Her active participation and decisive role in the battle demonstrate that, even in a male-dominated world, Cleopatra managed to assert herself as one of the most influential and enigmatic figures in ancient history. Her influence was felt not only in the battle itself, but in the repercussions that followed, shaping the fate of nations and empires. The aftermath of defeat, the fall of Antony and Cleopatra. The defeat at the Battle of Actium was a devastating blow for Mark Antony and Cleopatra. With their forces decimated and their position weakened, they found themselves in a desperate situation. Antony, who had once been one of the most powerful men in Rome, now faced the disintegration of his army and the loss of his authority. Cleopatra, in turn, saw her alliance with Antony crumble, putting not only her life but also the independence of her kingdom at risk. After the defeat, Antony and Cleopatra fled to Alexandria, where they attempted to regroup and prepare a defense against Octavian's inevitable attack. However, morale was low and many of their allies had deserted them. The news of Octavian's victory at Actium spread quickly, consolidating his power and further undermining Antony and Cleopatra's position. The arrival of Octavian's forces in Egypt in 30 BC marked the beginning of the end for Antony and Cleopatra. Antony tried to mount a desperate defense, but his forces were exhausted and poorly equipped. When Octavian's troops finally invaded Alexandria, the resistance was brief and futile. Antony, desperate and betrayed by many of his own men, committed suicide, mistakenly believing that Cleopatra had already done the same. Cleopatra, however, was still alive and attempted to negotiate with Octavian. She sought to secure the survival of her children and, if possible, retain a portion of her power. However, Octavian was unwilling to concede. He wanted Cleopatra's complete submission and full control of Egypt. Realizing that there was no escape and fearing being paraded as a trophy in a Roman triumph, Cleopatra decided to end her own life. Cleopatra's death marked the end of the Ptolemaic dynasty and the annexation of Egypt as a province of the Roman Empire. Octavian, now Augustus, used the victory to consolidate his power and begin the transformation of Rome from a republic to an empire under his leadership. The fall of Antony and Cleopatra symbolized the conclusion of an era and the beginning of a new phase in Roman history. The consequences of the defeat were profound and lasting. The loss of Egypt's independence marked the end of one of the world's oldest and most influential civilizations. The rich culture and traditions of Egypt were gradually absorbed by the vast Roman Empire. The story of Antony and Cleopatra, with its passions and tragedies, continued to capture the imagination of future generations, becoming an enduring symbol of love, power, and sacrifice. The legacy of Actium, the transformation of the Roman Empire. The Battle of Actium was a turning point in Roman history. Octavian's victory over Mark Antony and Cleopatra not only solidified his power, but also marked the end of the civil wars that had plagued Rome for decades. With his rivals eliminated, Octavian was able to transform Rome from an unstable republic into a powerful empire under his leadership. After his victory, Octavian returned to Rome and was hailed as the savior of the republic. In 27 BC, he was officially proclaimed Augustus, the first emperor of Rome. This event marked the beginning of the Principate, the first phase of the Roman Empire. Augustus implemented a series of political, social, and military reforms that stabilized the empire and laid the foundations for a period of peace and prosperity known as the Pax Romana. The transformation of Rome had a profound and lasting impact. Augustus reorganized the administration of the empire, strengthening central power and reducing corruption. He also promoted culture and the arts, sponsoring major works of literature, architecture, and engineering. His leadership was marked by a flourishing cultural life, which included figures such as the poet Virgil and the historian Livy. The annexation of Egypt was one of the most significant legacies of the Battle of Actium. Egypt became a Roman province, providing a vast amount of resources, especially grain, which was vital for feeding Rome's population. The wealth of Egypt also helped finance Augustus's military campaigns and construction projects in Rome. Additionally, Egyptian culture had a lasting influence on Rome, enriching its religion, art, and architecture. The legacy of Actium was also reflected in Augustan propaganda. Augustus used his victory to legitimize his rule, portraying himself as the restorer of peace and order. The battle was celebrated in monuments, coins, and literature, helping to consolidate Augustus's image as the founder of a new era. The narrative of victory over Antony and Cleopatra was carefully crafted to highlight Augustus's bravery and justice while demonizing his opponents as traitors and degenerates. Finally, the Battle of Actium and its aftermath had a lasting impact on historical memory. The story of Antony and Cleopatra, with its drama and tragedy, continued to captivate writers, artists, and historians over the centuries. The battle itself became a symbol of power and ambition, as well as the complex relationships between the East and the West. The legacy of Actium, therefore, was not only political and military but also cultural and symbolic, shaping how we understand one of the most decisive moments in ancient history.